Well, it's a perfect.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a little bit more than 5 minutes, but we had a nice little recess, and now we are ready to go into our study session. Dr. Thomas, purpose and agenda?
Thank you, Chair Bullion and members of the board. This evening, we have two topics that we're going to cover. And if I may, I would like to request to start with attendance and behavior. We have some staff who have been here all evening, and if we can maybe get some of our school-based staff up ahead of that, and then we'll go into the mid-year assessment report. Those are the two areas that we'll be in discussion with this evening. And we'll have Dr. Zumbush talk a little bit about our attendance and behavior, and then we've got some of our school staff for some contextual conversation as well in terms of what we see on a day-to-day basis and some of the efforts that they're doing in the building to support.
Good evening, Chair Bullion, members of the board, Dr. Thomas. I am here to talk about attendance and behavior, kind of a mid-year report. This was supposed to be in the last one. I apologize, I was very ill, I could not attend, so thanks for your patience and allowing me to give this presentation this evening. We do have a number of principals and deans in the building here. And if you have questions specifically about how things look from an operational lens, they're really the folks that can tell you more about that. So I'll start with the data presentation, and then we'll kind of go from there and see where our questions lead us. So I'll start with attendance. I know that I've presented on this before, but over the last couple of years, I'm losing track of time, year and a half to 2 years, we've been working to refresh our attendance codes. Part of this was, over time, legacy codes or codes get created and then other ones aren't needed anymore. And we don't necessarily have someone kind of cleaning up and reorganizing all of those things. Some of these things you'll see on our old code list. We don't even have programming for those anymore. So the other thing we noticed is that we had some differences across sites. We also had some specificity to our old codes that we didn't think was necessary. So all of this led to really a need to refresh the whole system. So what we did was worked with every single dean at every level to understand which ones we needed, which ones could be rolled into others. And there you can see on the right-hand side the refresh of the codes that we're using. K-12. This doesn't encompass early learning, but these are the K-12 codes. And then those columns on the right-hand side, if it has an X next to it, that indicates that that level uses that code. So what this has allowed us to do is to streamline. We also have had some other programmatic areas that wanted some codes for specific purposes. So this really allowed us to kind of reset our whole system and make sure that we're all on the same page. One thing to note is that attendance is tracked differently by grade level. Elementary attendance is taken twice a day. It's taken in the morning and the afternoon, so there's an AM attendance and a PM attendance. In secondary, it's taken in every class period. So when we're comparing pure numbers across elementary and secondary, it doesn't quite work to compare the exact numbers because we're really looking at just a different set of number of times a student's attendance is taken during the day. So I've presented these kind of chunked out by different levels so that we can kind of see level by level what the trend is looking like. So I'm suggesting you kind of look at one in a bit of isolation compared to the others. I also want to be clear that while we've done this massive recode, we need a little time to kind of, level out and make sure that we're all using those codes. We are, working on a more consistent, cleaner reporting process. And sometimes there's going to be, this is for attendance and behavior. Sometimes there's going to be a little bit of noise in the data as we find the balance in our new system. So this might be, I think, is more true as we get to behavior. But sometimes we may just need to be working on collecting data more consistently or, using the codes correctly. So the attendance is tricky because of the massive amounts of recoding we have done. It's really hard to compare year over year. And like I said before, these charts are really intended to show patterns. This doesn't tell us individually what's going on with individual families and students. That's really the work at the site level. And so really the intention of this is to just show patterns over time. What we look at is to see, does something jump out at us as something that's a major systems change that kind of indicates that we may need to pay closer attention to something. So for our attendance.
Can I ask a quick question before you begin? So have these codes been going for this school year?
Yes.
So from day one?
Yep.
To present? Okay, thank you.
Yes. So at each level, we basically classify attendance into two categories, excused and unexcused. So the purpose of this chart is to really show the difference between those types of excused. This is at the elementary level. The reporting is by month. This is a common way of reporting this. One contextual factor is there's not exactly the same number of school days in every month, but this is kind of an ability to see it consistently throughout the year so far. You can see that at elementary, the vast majority of our absences are excused, and that's a common pattern in elementary. Unexcused means, we've attempted to contact families and we don't have an excuse listed in our files. In terms of unexcused absences, there's really three categories within elementary. So we indicate whether they leave early, they're tardy, or if they're absent and it's unexcused overall. So you can see in general that the tardy is an area that we have higher numbers than leave early. So, this, and again, this is a conversation you can talk through with the deans, but this could indicate, some transportation challenges or other things like that they work through as they see these come through their data set.
Do you want us to wait till the end to ask questions or on the slides?
I think if it's related to the data, you can ask them now. If it's related to more specific processes at the school level, probably wait.
Okay. Yeah, related to the data on this, I was just struck by the number of leave early unexcused, especially in elementary when parents are signing them out. What is unexcused? Like, is there something that classifies as unexcused if you're picking up your student? Is it like, if you're gone for vacation or leave early for a sporting event, is that considered an unexcused or an excused?
I think that's where the site can help us.
Okay.
But yes, there are certain things that are excused and unexcused. It has to do with how much you've already had excused absences, if you've had a certain amount, but also there are certain activities that are classified as unexcused.
I was wondering, okay.
So yeah, I think that would be better if we could talk to the deans and principals about that. In terms of elementary excused absences, you can see there are other codes, but the other codes are very small numbers. So I wanted to just start by showing you the major reasons why students have excused absences. One example, there's a funeral code that is used very, very infrequently. That's not something that I felt was necessary to show on the chart because that's not something that is taking much of our data and we're just kind of cluttered up. So these are the major reasons why students would have excused absences at elementary. One of the things I think is pretty clear, December had a higher number of illness. That really has to do with the student being sick versus out for another reason. Parent request typically has to do with vacation. So you can see October and December have higher parent requests at elementary. My hypothesis with that would be something to do with the MEA break and winter break, that parents would increase parent requests around those times. Appointments are any sort of doctor or dental appointments, and then there's excused, leave early excused and tardy excused. Moving on to middle school. You'll start to see as students get older, I think there's just a little bit higher of a proportion of the unexcused coming in, because as we think about attendance, when you're at elementary level, it's really kind of a family measure on, is the student coming, is the student being picked up, dropped off. As students start to get older, it starts to become more of a measure of a combination of the student's decision-making and the family. So that's just something to keep in context. So a little bit more unexcused at the middle school level, not a ton, but you can see there that our highest absences were overall in October and December. Similarly, because they take attendance at every period, we don't have a leave early or an arrival late because they're either there or not there for a specific class. So here you can see the difference between an unexcused absence and an unexcused unknown. That differentiation, I would also probably need to refer to our deans to talk more specifically about that difference there. Slightly different kind of top reasons why students are absent in middle school. We start to see student support service coming in. That's if a student needs to go see a counselor or another service provider within the school. And school activity starts to become a pretty big reason why students are absent in the secondary level. So you can see in October and December, there was also a high amount of school activity absences. And similar to elementary, illness, biggest in December, and then parent request around holiday breaks. Here's for high school. Again, you can start to see that unexcused creeping up a little bit more as the students get older. And again, if you want to know kind of the difference between the unexcused unknown, unexcused absence, that really has to do with whether we know the reason. So sometimes we know the reason and it counts as unexcused. Sometimes we don't know the reason. And I think as the students get older and we get into secondary, it's harder to kind of track down that reason. In elementary, generally our front office knows the reason why a student isn't there or leaves early or comes late. That becomes harder and harder as as the students get older. So we just have a bigger number of unknowns that we can't track down the reason why a student doesn't attend a class or a day of school.
Excuse me, I have a question on that. Are these all actual full classes missing, or are these tardy more than 15 minutes or something with the unexcused?
These are full classes.
Okay.
In terms of the excused absences, it's similar to the middle school. Again, student activities become a major reason why students are not in class as the students get older. And yeah. Okay, should we answer questions about attendance first before I talk about behavior? Okay, this is a democratic process here. Okay, so what questions do we have about attendance before we move on to behavior?
I have questions/comments.
Okay.
If that's okay. First of all, I just want to, so looking at our attendance, it's reported to MDE as well. Like as a total, we also report it to MDE. And so it's something that is really near and dear to my heart. And Dr. Thomas always says, cheeks in the seats, right? Kids can't learn if they're not here. One of the primary reasons I ran for school board is some of the challenges that one of my son had in high school. And I just want to say thank you to Dr. Bezek and to the leadership at the high school, because numbers don't lie. Back in 2022, our attendance rate was 71.3%. And now it's at 79.8%. So it's increased 10%. I also know as a parent who had a kid in their district in 2022, and I have a son in our district now, there's been some dramatic changes up at the high school on what we're doing to encourage students to cheeks in the seats, be in the classroom. So I would just love to hear a little bit from Dr. Bezick, if that's okay with you. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm assuming that's why you're here. About sort of what are the positive things that you've done in the last 3 years that has helped to improve that 10-point attendance rate. And then after you're done, I'd like to talk about the middle school, because that's where we've actually seen a decrease in numbers. And maybe there's some learnings that we can learn from the high school to the middle school that we could, that could be translated in our district as well, so.
You know, the philosophy is trying to change behavior, so you try to make relationships with kids and find out what the rationale is for why they're, it's that same conversation, you're gonna be more successful if you're there, so we really look at any discipline as how do you use the least amount of discipline to change the behavior in a positive direction, so, you know, welcoming kids in, you know, just being careful when they are coming back, because sometimes we make those little comments that we think are, oh, it's you know, hey, we're good to see you, we're glad to see it, and just trying to, again, kill them with positivity and try and build those relationships so that they see the connection to being there and being successful. Because you could be there and get by, but if you're there, you're gonna, you know, you're punishing yourself. So it's trying to do those things. Yeah, and trying to get everybody on board and doing that. The PBIS type ideas of just, again, trying to catch kids doing the right thing and trying to reinforce that, and trying to use incentives for, you know, hook kids into what do you like to do. So if you got to be there to participate in your activities and all of those things. So that's what, you know, what I would say. And then, you know, you're looking at the 71, I'm looking at, you know, sometimes we pull them from different categories, because I think ours is at about 90%, you know, about 91%, but depends on whether you're pulling it from campus or what piece you're pulling it from, but that's what we try to do on a regular basis. And the deans do a big part of that, and we've been trying to, you know, tie in the grades and just connecting with parents, and, you know, that tough piece. So we were just talking back there and going, what do you call an unexcused? What do you call an excuse? Because you try to work with the families, because you don't want to be in this, you know, this little fight, you know, because sometimes people feel that they have a reason why they're pulling their child out. But we will, if we're finding that the parent sometimes needs help because the kid is maybe a little more forceful and, you know, they just need some more support. And sometimes they'll say, hey, can you call it an unexcused? Can you help me here on this situation? So it's better if we have that positive partnership with parents.
What about like what about systems you've put in place? Because I know as a parent, I've noticed some different
we've been,
systems, so.
having the deans call them down at, you know, like when you start getting to like 5 tardies or 5 absent, you know, we started just pulling it back earlier. I'd have to look at the exact number, but they're intervening earlier and trying to call kids down on a regular basis. So they're constantly meeting with kids. Like I did an observation the other day on a dean, and they were just calling kids down and having conversations, and then they'd be looking at their attendance and looking at their grades and just tying that all together. And, you know, when kids are making positive gains, congratulating them on that. And then we've been trying to do more recognition, like student of the week, and get a goofy picture with your dean. And it's usually kids that, you know, have been having troubles and made changes, and, you know, just trying to recognize them so that they're like, oh, hey, this is I always try to tell kids, don't dig yourself a hole. The best way to get off the radar is just do what you're supposed to be doing, and then people aren't on your back. So, you know, it's those conversations over and over and over again, and having the teachers do the same things. And then being out in the halls and doing the sweeps too, because right after COVID, we had a lot of kids everywhere that were kind of present but absent, meaning they weren't not at school, but they were just kind of wandering. So having those hall monitors and having people out and about and just making sure kids are where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. Because you asked about, is this tardy or is this absent? And you know, there can be a little bit of that game too. In a big building like ours, where we have kids on open periods, and we have and I have 800 kids, you know, for an hour and a half out at lunch, it can be easy to kind of, you know, drift into an area where you're not supposed to be. So just trying to catch those things and tighten those things up.
That's wonderful. I think from a parent's standpoint, I mean, my son went to a dentist appointment, and I forgot to call him in, and he got called down to the dean's office. So it's definitely something that I'm seeing as a parent, and holding kids accountable to being in school is really important. So I appreciate it.
Well, I
Thank you.
appreciate
thank you
hearing
all
that,
your
because
hard
we sometimes get discouraged, because you feel like you're chasing there's some things that are problems that don't have solutions, they're just problems that you gotta continually work with, like every year you get another group of freshmen, and you would think that they'd be different, but they need to grow and mature, and, you see some of the same issues over and over again, so you're like, man, am I making a difference or not on some of
Well,
this?
I think you are, and I appreciate the parent partnership. It's really important, so thank you.
Appreciate that.
While you're up,
Okay.
I had the same question. Whoa, this mic works now. I had a similar question to Director Mason in terms of, can you just give a couple of examples? And I know you're
Maybe.
just high school and then maybe the middle school too, about unexcused unknown. Like, what are some examples?
Well, sometimes you can't get a hold of the parent, so you're trying to, or the kid says, I'm gonna clear them up, because we'll mark kids absent, and then we say, hey, we're not always perfect, so you can clear that up.
Sure.
So sometimes they just haven't been cleared up yet, because sometimes it's the sheer volume. I have one person that kind of is the attendance person, so there's some that lag sometimes, and it's like, and there are some parents that aren't as receptive or have challenges, or maybe just aren't in the picture, so it's hard to get a verification. You'll keep calling, and sometimes there's some that just aren't in the position to call back at that time, or I hate to say it, but have kind of said, you deal with them. That doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes it does, and, we'll step in and, help keep trying to encourage the kid.
Yeah. What about at the middle school level where they don't necessarily have their own car?
And I don't know if you know this, pardon me, but we do have the middle school deans here.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't mean
And I
Dr.
think
Bezek.
Dr. Bezek could answer for the middle school, but they're here, and they've been waiting.
I appreciate your bail.
Yes, they do have scooters.
Thank you, Dr. Bezek.
Thank you. Sure. Gosh, it's nice and loud now.
Well, good evening, everybody. We'll just do really quick introductions. My name's Zach Hott. I'm the Dean of Students at Twin Oaks. I've been here, this is my third year here in the district, and then I'll let Rachel introduce herself.
I am Rachel Loftus. I am the Dean of Students at Hidden Oaks. This is my first year here, fourth year as a dean. I was a dean in another district before coming here.
So I think that, I'll go with Director Olstad's question first. I think you're asking a little bit about those unexcused unknowns,
Yeah.
right? A lot of those for us are coming when families aren't communicating, right, about when a student's gone, right? So when a staff member takes attendance for the day, right, and a student's marked as like absent, it kind of shows up as this kind of unknown piece. It's not automatically an unexcused unknown. And so we're trying to do everything that we can do to communicate with families about that. And so that's gonna look like our administrative assistants send out an automated email every day, along with an additional Infinite Campus email every day that goes out to families. We have an attendance email that's set up at the middle school level in both buildings, so that parents are able to communicate both right through a phone call and through that attendance email. And we try to catch as much as we can, right, through that. But there's still times where it comes into an unexcused unknown. And then in that case, both of us are reaching out individually to families, right, to try to get those pieces cleared up. It might be just for a period, right? It might be a kid got pulled for a band lesson and it forgot to get marked in Infinite Campus, right? It might be for a kid was gone for a whole day for a doctor's appointment and parents just forgot to reach out. And so that's working through our phone calls, working through our cultural liaisons, sending out emails, just trying to continuously communicate with families. I will say that unknown, unexcused is a new code at the middle school this year. And so that is something that we have both been working with our teams fairly recently, actually, like in the last couple of months, to make sure that we are all very consistent on how we're coding that. So I think back on one of the previous slides, it had kind of looked like there was a large number of those, the blue one, right? Whatever, I can probably go back to that. Yeah, the unexcused absences right there in December, that was us really working with our team, right, to kind of go back. So we had gone back and done some recoding, because in previous years, it had just been coded all as unexcused absence. We now reserve that for truly, it was a oversleeping, right? because that's a miss the bus, kind of oversleeping, we still expect you to be in school. We reserve those for that kind of unexcused absence, and the unknown is when we still don't know why. So oftentimes we have it in there, but we're still working with families, reaching out, trying to get it done, because for, all of our systems, we need it to be kind of in that category of excused or unexcused. And then Director Atkinson, I think you were asking a little bit about systems, right?
Yeah, and just to clarify, the numbers that I pulled are from MDE, and they're
Yeah.
probably a moment in time attendance,
Right.
Dr. Bezick. So, I mean, just moment in time, anybody can go to the website and pull attendance. In 2022, it was 81.5% of kids are attending.
Yeah.
And then, and in 2024, it's actually dropped to, it was 76.2 in '23, and in '24, it went up a little bit to 78.9%. So just trying to understand,
Totally.
I know you're fairly new, but.
Yeah,
like,
and I
what
think
is-
even the year you're talking about, like when it started to swing up, was I think the first year that we had a dean in each building. And that was my first year, and I know one of the big things that we tried to do with the previous dean and myself were really look at our systems that were in place, because we also had counselors, additional counselors in each building. And so what we've been able to do with those resources is we have attendance teams in each of our building that meet weekly. So mine meets tomorrow morning, right? And we go through and we have a spreadsheet of kids, and we are going through and tracking, okay, this kid has been gone X number of days. Have we sent our first, notification to the family? Because we also know that when students are in school, right, and they're in school regularly, that leads to those better academic outcomes. So we want to intervene early on those conversations, and so we're notifying parents at like 5 days. Hey, your student's been gone for 5 days for any reason, right? We want to just have that on your radar, and so we have those communications. Sometimes those are going out via email, sometimes those are going out from a phone call, from a counselor, from myself, but we're trying to work as a team to do that. And then it's helpful on that team as well, we have our district nurse, and we have our social worker on there, because we also know that our kids come from a variety of different situations, right? And so we want to have those people as members of our team to be able to, consult on those pieces, right? Give us some additional information on the kids, and then we work together as that team to make sure that we're constantly in communication with families. Another thing too that, Rachel brought from a previous district that's been helpful this year is we're working on tardies. And so we started that Q2 where we have been, as deans, tracking tardies, pulling students down, and having kind of weekly conversations with a cohort of students as we look through those tardies, and really trying to kind of build up, their capacity for their awareness on when they're being tardy, how do they get to class? And our own internal data showed that from Q1, where we kind of had a large amount of tardies, to Q2, we were able to decrease that. And so we're hoping that as we continue this throughout the year and in upcoming years, right, we're able to help, slowly chip away, right, and build some of those positive habits in our kids through those conversations.
Anyone else?
Feel free to answer. It might be a Jay-Z question.
Yeah.
How far back can you go to edit? So say you have, right, you've got a family and they come back a week later, 10 days later, a
Yep.
month later to correct something. How far back can you go to correct those things?
In the current school year that we're in.
Okay,
Yep.
so at any point.
Yep.
Okay.
So we try to be really flexible with our families.
Sure.
Right? Because we understand that there's different situations.
Yep.
Right? And so I think that's part of our piece with families is there's situations that I've learned about where it's like, okay, we're gonna go back to last month because I've been trying to communicate with you, but we don't have the correct contact information. You changed phone numbers, so we wanna be flexible with families there.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yep.
I did have one more. Is that okay to come back to me?
Absolutely.
I didn't know, and this is either for Dr. Zumbush or anybody else, but have we seen, and I know that, January is not in here yet, but have we noticed even anecdotally that there's been some increased absences, probably, I would imagine, unexcused, with increased ICE activity or anything, people being scared to come to school? I mean, and I know it's kind of hard to quantify right now, I 100% get that, but I didn't know if you've noticed anything.
Yeah, and We do, we have that piece of it, and I think where we worked really hard is working with our cultural liaisons, right? Continue to work with families, have those conversations, right? And be understanding of where families are at as well, right? And so I think I wouldn't say that it's huge, right? But I know of a handful of situations.
Yeah.
And I think that lends to a question I have. We have both a policy 503 and there's Minnesota law that guides the Minnesota compulsory attendance laws. One of them is basically that a student who is absent for 15 consecutive days must be withdrawn. And then there's also students under 18 who have a combination of 7 unexcused absences will result in their referral to Scott County Human Resources. So I'm assuming that those are the same policies and guidelines that you're following regarding these unexcused and working. You mentioned 5.
Yep.
So I just wanted to make sure.
Well,
I mean, 5 is not far from 7.
Right,
so-
correct. And 5 is
And I
actually
would hope that you're getting involved before 5.
100%.
You know what I mean?
And 5, when we talk about 5, that's excused absences. So
Okay,
you
these
kind
are
of look.
unexcused, yeah.
So these are 7 unexcused. So that child could have 7 unexcused and 6 excused. So we guide, when we say like the 5-day, we say we know that their family has communicated those 5 days. So we have that lens, but then we also they haven't communicated these 7 days as well. So it could add up to 13 days total, which then pushes, the next level of 10. But yes, 7, we look at both of that too.
And even with that as well, in statute, we are actually required at 3 days of unexcused to make that notification to families as well, via a letter. And so that's part of what that attendance team is doing, is we're consistently tracking the data. And I think that team has been pivotal because it's helped us stay on top of that. And so those pieces are all in there. And there's actually, just to kind of add on to that, because I think it applies, Scott County also has a truancy diversion program. It's called their PATH program. And so that is another piece that we work very closely with referring students there. Typically that happens right when we've kind of exhausted our resources and there's something else going on there. And that kind of even comes in before those 7 days often, right? So that we have outside resources. Treehouse is maybe a program that you've heard of that often comes in and works with our kids in building. And it's been a tremendous resource for us.
I think partnering with parents as early in the intervention process, as a parent who's been down this path, is really important. So,
Yes.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I don't know if I truly got clarity on my question around unexcused. I guess, and I don't know if we have anyone from the elementary level here, but like, how would we have an unexcused absence as far as leaving early, right? When we have parents signing them out.
In policy, and in our school board policy in 503, it's like, so if I'm picking up my kid to bring them to a sporting event, per policy, that says it's unexcused.
It's unexcused. Okay, that's what I was wondering. And vacation, like anything like that, that isn't like
Yeah.
a doctor or whatever. Okay.
And we do have elementary folks here, the team from Red
okay,
Tail Ridge,
sorry.
in case you want to
Back
call
there.
them out of the bullpen.
Speaking about policy, is there anything, knowing the policies, is there anything you'd recommend that we could enhance that would make your lives easier, better, help support kids? I'm just asking, it's something you can think about and bring back. I mean, we review, that's our job as a board, to
Yeah.
review policy.
I
so-
find it, coming from a different district, we have one set policy for like K-12.
Okay.
But in Prior Lakes policy, they have like an elementary section and a middle school section and a
see
high
that.
school section. So that's just kind of, that's how we knew about elementaries. I was like, wait, why are they? So we looked that up. So that's something, and just overall with coding, at my previous district, you were either AEX, absent excused, AUX, absent unexcused. So my team always gets really, they're like, why are you talking like that? Because you're either green or red, but then with kind of looking at ours, you have parent requests and illness, and it's just hard to manage all of those parent requests as well for attendance.
Right, and I would just say, looking back to the list, Dr. Zumbush, if we have changed the coding of our unexcused and excused, we need to change our policy, because they're not mirroring as I'm looking at them right here. The unexcused tardies and absences, I'm not seeing, there's a lot of these that are excused that don't align to the policy. So I think it's something that we need to circle back on. Well, it says unexcused examples are running late, oversleeping, a malfunctioning alarm clock, missing the bus, shopping, visiting friends, a haircut. Those are all unexcused. But in here, I don't know if that exactly lines up with some of these. They're excused.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just a little different than what was listed on the first page of our presentation. So I just want to make sure
Yeah,
there's
no,
alignment.
but I
If
think we'll
there's
even-
changes with the coding and the alignment, then we need to update our policy to ensure we have the accurate, to help you guys do your job more
Yeah, and
effectively.
we'll bring that back to our teams and get back to you guys on that, because I think that's a good idea to even just look at it. So, thank you guys.
Anything else on that?
Yeah, thank you for the examples. I think that shows the nuance to this data and how, that September component, out of context without the middle school deans explaining that was a change and we're putting systems into place. You can already see that by December, they've already adjusted for that. So it's a complicated data set and it's a continually changing one. So we will, this was the first effort at refining them. I think there's a lot of people that would be happy to even further consolidate the codes, but that will be something that we can think through over time. We have the similar process with behaviors. We had kind of similar to excused and unexcused. We have behaviors that fall into majors or minors. I want to, so we did do the same process where we were refining, could we roll multiple codes into one, could we roll 3 codes into one? Could we do some consolidation? And we did that process there. One thing that, and I think if you have questions from the deans as well, they'll affirm that behavior data is very complicated because it both reflects a student behavior, but it also reflects how the adult responds to it. So one singular student behavior could be interpreted or documented differently by different individuals depending on, and we try to make sure that everyone's on the same page and we're coding similarly, but just inherently, it's a complicated data component because it both reflects student behavior and adult response. I also want to indicate that while we are looking at changes over time, one of the things that can happen is we could maybe get better at documenting our practices. So it might look like our behaviors are going up. That could mean that we're actually doing a better job of documenting behaviors that are already existed. So that's where I think the context with the deans and what happens on a daily basis at the site is really important to take into consideration. When we think about minors, these are not, especially more at the lower level, but I think across our whole system, minors are really used as opportunities to teach students. I mean, majors are too, but minors, really the purpose of those are to have a learning opportunity for students and to coach them. That's not necessarily a purely punitive indication there. And then trends over time and severity are really what we're trying to look at to see whether major things have changed over time. And this one, I was able to cross-reference codes, historic codes and previous codes in order to show some change over the years. So here is our elementary behavior incidence. This is basically 2.5 years of data. So 2 years ago, last year, and then this year up until December. You can kind of see here the cadence of majors and minors. The vast majority of our incidents are minors, so it's that coaching opportunity for students to learn about a certain behavior and to improve over time. I also then took them and overlaid them so you can see them year on top of each other. So it's basically the same data, but it's the summative number of behavior incidents, and I overlaid. So in the purple is 2 years ago, in the teal is last year, and then the yellow is this year so far. My takeaway on this is that the trend looks fairly similar. I know that we can, there's individual differences we could point out by month, but in general, I think we're seeing kind of a similar cadence so far this year as we've seen in previous years. At the middle school, this is what it looks like. The same by month, 2 years ago, last year, and this year. Again, most of our incidents are minors, and we're looking at that trend over time. I think deans would probably say that around breaks and near the end of the year is when, we have that uptick in behavior incidents at school. Similarly, this is the trend over time. We did see a shorter or a smaller, lower start to the year, but then an increase in October. And again, we would have to have a discussion with the deans to talk about what they saw at the site to see whether that might be a change in practice or something that happened with student behavior. And then similarly at the high school, same data here. You start to get a little bit more majors. I think as we get to older students, we have higher expectations on what students, know and they kind of know right from wrong a little bit more. They have higher expectations. So you have kind of more majors as the students get older. It's still more minors than majors, but kind of goes up a little bit as we have higher expectations for students. And a pretty flat start to this year. So overall, as I'm looking at these trends, I don't see anything that's like drastically different from previous years. But it's very nice to have the codes all cleaned up and to know that we have a better system moving forward. So I'll pause again and see if there's any questions in terms of behavior data.
To start with elementary schools, is there, I know we've talked a lot about the K through 3 discipline. Do you think there would be a difference within the data if that were different? And I understand that that's a hypothetical. If anyone is even willing to answer that, that'd be great.
You're talking about
Are you
the
talking about the
That's the
exclusionary
exclusionary
practices?
discipline, yes.
I don't think it codes, no. That
No?
wouldn't code any different in terms of the behavior or the severity of the
Okay.
behavior.
And then my next one on the elementary, what is a major? Like, can you give me an example? It's just hard for me to fathom.
Yeah, so if we go back
elementary
here,
kid.
not.
Well, I
all-
understand what that says, but like,
Yeah, so
Do we want to hear examples?
it's a fight, it's an altercation, it's a physical, yeah. Okay.
oh, perfect. I really just wanted to, we shine a light on Principal Bezek and then the middle school,
Well, my name's Adam Brandell. Been the dean at Red Tail for about 5 years. Majors, here are the categories: defiance, disrespect, majors, disruption to learning, fight, altercation, harassment, leaving the classroom or building without permission, physical aggression, severe technology violations, theft, threats, or property damage. So those are the categories that we put them in. Lots of times it can be repeated minors. So if it's something that they've been working on and then they feel like they need to take it to the next level, they'd put it in as a minor or as a major.
would you see that more of a repeated thing as something that you see often or just more of a one-time occurrence?
More of a one-time occurrence.
Thank you. I have a question about reporting data. And so of those majors, how many of them are reported to MDE? Because like we have MDE, I'm kind of a data geek, sorry, but I've been tracking our discipline data since 2017, and I know the codes have changed, and that's important to understand. But I think what's more important is to see the data of which ones we've seen a really big increase in. And so I'm trying to understand when you say major, are those all being reported to MDE? Or they're very specific? And I question whether it's everyone, because as a district, for example, last year we had 2023, because MDA data lags, there was 95 fights as a district. So that's what I'm trying to understand, how their data is actually reported. And more importantly, it's not just about the data, but like, who is reviewing the data, and what are we doing, how often is it reviewed, and like, what are we doing to help, like, put processes in place to help those kids, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I'm not really sure about reporting to MDE.
I'll clarify one thing. One thing that I did not put in this presentation, I'm happy to include moving forward, there's a whole nother category of data with behaviors that is our response data. So that would be what we do as a result of the behavior. My understanding, I believe what you're referencing is probably the UFARS data, and that has to do with suspensions.
the whole category of things.
Yep, so that would be more related to the response, and that reporting has to do with, lost instructional time and things like that. So that would be a different kind of category of reporting. And I believe that has to do with suspensions and expulsions. So that's
super helpful. So you're basically saying what gets reported to MDE is only like if there's a suspension.
Correct.
To that level.
Yeah.
That is incredibly helpful. Thank you.
over time, if we want to include the response data, again, that's a whole nother category of information. But yes, this is for our internal purposes. MDE is tracking something for a different purpose. So that would be the distinction.
Well, I think
there.
for me, it's important to understand trends over time. What are the things where we've seen big increases? And then also, where are we seeing decreases? Like, what type of systems are we putting in place to help our students? Whether it's with where do they need more support, or, what are we, so.
Sure, so it sounds like you kind of wanted to know our systems for handling behavior and helping with behavior?
Yeah.
So
And
we-
how often are you guys, reviewing the data and understanding which kids need support and all that kind of stuff?
Sure, so Barb and the social worker and myself at our elementary work almost weekly to circle around and figure out which students need help, and we work really closely with the classroom teachers. We put a lot of systems in place, like things like check-in, check-out, which is, we usually end up with a behavior form, and that's tailored specifically to the student, what the teacher feels that they need. We work with the parents, and then they fill out that form daily, and if they're with me, they'll check in the morning. We'll set goals for the day, and then they'll check in the afternoon, and we'll see how they did based on that form. That's a really effective one. We do social stories, so when kids need specific things, we tailor a story to them. I'm going to do this thing to be successful. This is a thing that I struggle with. When this happens, this is the result or the consequence. We do social groups with our social worker, and individual problem solving and coaching.
Awesome.
So lots of that. I've got 7 in check-in, check-out right now, and I start to collect them at about this time of the year, so.
I love the goal setting. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's really
I think it's
cool.
really helpful for them.
Yeah, and then the reward is usually not an item, but like time with a friend or time with a
Oh,
teacher or a
that's
special
wonderful.
person in the building.
Yeah, those are the kind of things that, I like to hear about, because perhaps that can be replicated in other buildings, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and every building pretty much does the same thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other,
I have, sorry.
we got a couple.
Yeah, just.
We're gonna try to be mindful of.
Yeah, of
Yep,
course.
okay.
Just on the middle school, I noticed that it looks like 2025 is quite high compared to the prior couple of years. And I know you mentioned maybe that's just more reporting, but I know we've also put several initiatives in place, the PBIS, we have GPS, we have the cell phone policy that we put in place. And, we added staff, of course, to help address some of this. So how are we kind of measuring those changes, or is there any explanation for why we are seeing the increase in the middle school, do you feel like?
Sure, and I think that's also something that we were a little
Yes.
perplexed by as well.
Okay.
And I think that's an ongoing conversation with Dr. Zumbush, because prior to coming here, the data that we're looking at for this school year is actually showing a decrease from what we saw in a previous year. So we just want to have more of an open discussion on that, and that's just something that we're going to see is maybe there's something we're looking at that's wrong, right? That we want to look at. But I think we've also, tried to put in a lot of different, like, similar systems, right, to kind of what you heard from the elementary school as well, to be supporting kids. But yeah, we kind of, from what I'm seeing, it looked like, what would that be, 23, 24, we kind of started to see, it was here. We saw a spike last school year, and this school year, from what we're seeing, is kind of going down right now.
Okay, yeah, it looks like it definitely has gone up this fall, so, and then, like, related to that, like, are there any, I have middle schoolers, so I hear a lot about this age, but I think a lot of what I hear is a lot of the issues on the technology that we have. Do you see a lot of that, or are there improvements that we can make on, like, our iPads that our kids have and trying to keep them focused in the classroom?
It's
And
an
at lunch and
ongoing
here?
battle,
Yes.
right? Because I think it's an ongoing battle, because it's a teachable moment, right? We see that with our kids, right? We're especially on the iPads and different things that we're seeing, whether they're, playing a game during class that they're having access, that they find a way around to, right? Or whether they are deciding to message their friend on their Gmail account, right? Oftentimes innocent things, right? We're trying to have those conversations, have those teachable moments with kids. Often encourage staff to start with that, and then sometimes if it becomes too much, it trickles up to our level.
Yeah.
And we have those conversations with kids, have those conversations with families. We also have additional systems that we can put restrictions on those iPads. And so we do, I know at Twin Oaks, I have a handful of kids right now who have just had a number of violations, right? Where they need that extra support to be able to say, okay, this is a struggle for you to focus right now. So we have a code on there that only teachers and the adults have access to let them into that. And we don't say that that's for the rest of the year. We put a time limit on it, right? We earn it back. We say, okay, for the next 4 weeks, you need to show us that you can follow these expectations. There's some responsibility you have. And after that period of time, and you've shown us, hey, you can earn this back, we'll try it again. And so in terms of other things that the board can do, I don't necessarily know of other systems or things off the top of my head, but I think it's a very age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate thing, right? Whether it is doing it on your iPad, whether it's passing notes like I did in school, right? To the back of like the bus, right? Those are age-appropriate things. So we just continue to work through those challenges.
Yeah, I was like even specifically thinking, are there policy changes around like the lunch period, not having iPads at the lunch table or things like that that would be helpful? I don't know.
Yeah, those are things we could definitely look at. I would say anecdotally, since we really put the cell phone policy in place last year, we have noticed a huge just increase in the chatter in the lunchroom, the talking in the lunchroom.
Yeah.
Yes, there are students who are on their iPads, but I would say it's not the majority. It's probably less than 10%.
Yeah.
And for some of those students, that's their recharge time, right? That's the way that they recharge. And so I've enjoyed the flexibility of it, but I also enjoy the chatter and the positivity in the lunchroom. It's a really good thing.
That's really good to
That's
hear.
really good to
That's
hear.
really good to
Yeah,
hear.
thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you. First of all, I'm sure that, the documentation and stuff like that and the breakdown of the data, the granularity of it and the more conciseness of it as you guys get used to the system is really going to help. And I appreciate the effort that everyone has made kindergarten through high school in putting the system together. And I'm sure it's going to get tweaked over time as you see things and as you include things, but that's what's going to happen. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of comment too on what you were saying about data, we review this monthly with a team of teachers, our PBIS team. And I know, Rachel, we've started at Twin, but I have had a little bit of a head start. We have a student leadership team. So I actually bring some of this data in a very small format, right, to students to get their feedback as well on what are you seeing out there? Does like your experience match what the data is showing? And then what are ideas that they have to kind of help both engage with students and review those expectations, but also to incentivize the positive things, the reteaching of the behavior that we want to see. Right now, the kids are turning in their pride tickets to dye my hair a color the first week of March. So we do all sorts of things, right, to try to get those positive behaviors.
Thank you so much.
I think that's a Laker pride.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for everything you do. You guys have tough
Yeah.
jobs, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Late too. We realize it's late.
Yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. I think it's, both behavior and attendance are such a community metric, and it's something we can all work together on. So I am grateful that we went into this data coding project because I've gotten to know the whole system a lot better, and I appreciate the offer to come back with any sort of, policy or procedure change that the deans and principals think would be beneficial to their sites. So I can commit to that. Yes, I do think we'll have some changes over time. I've kind of put into place, we don't change things mid-year, so we'll do a review at the end of this year and then possibly make some modifications over the summer. But just for the sake of some sanity, we're just kind of keeping them all the same this year and then doing an end-of-year review, and then we may have some tweaks again. But I think having this conversation and partnership is really important to all this data. So thank you so much for staying late. I know you guys have to go to bed.
Thank you.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
All right, well, it looks like next up is adjourning. We are going to, I'm actually, is it not?
Go back to
We have one more topic.
20A.
Oh, Fastbridge. Is it, where is it?
We jumped first to 20B.
Oh, it's,
So Jay-Z's ready to go.
thank you.
Not even close.
Attendance and behavior. What?
Okay, I think this is the last item. Okay. Mid-year data review, this was asked last year and this year as well. Last year, I believe it came a little bit later. I looked it up. I think the presentation was in March. So this is very preliminary. We actually, the data has probably changed slightly from when I pulled it till now because we're still kind of making sure that all students have completed that mid-year Fastbridge assessment. So I will just kind of go to high level on what it's looking like, and then just a reminder for Fastbridge data, the purpose of Fastbridge is to give teachers and schools and district level feedback on, what's working, pockets of success. So that's really the purpose of it. I think, it's what we have available to provide to you all in terms of a mid-year update. But the use of it really is for that continuous improvement process at the site level. Just repeating Dr. Thomas's data beliefs that we may not get any answers from this, but as we saw from the last presentation, it helps us have a good conversation. So we will move on to the purpose of Fastbridge is to give a screener. It basically indicates whether a student has a risk factor in the main areas of math and reading. And we use it for a lot of different purposes. We look at whether interventions are working. We look at growth trends. We look at, individual classrooms where we're seeing really great outcomes and trying to figure out what might be going on there. So it's a multifaceted purpose to giving Fastbridge. I will talk a little bit about the shifts that we saw this year of the requirements due to CAPD. We have a very heavy assessment year, so trying to make some difficult decisions on how to adjust our assessment system kind of mid-year in order to provide necessary relief, and then knowing that we actually have to kind of rethink it all for next year, but I don't think that's a tonight problem. Okay, so one of the things we did to relieve some pressure this year was to remove the requirement to do kindergarten, first grade math data mid-year. That's a one-on-one collected assessment. We had a very difficult time with it last year. We paid for a lot of subs. There was high illness. Lots of different reasons, but that was not collected this winter. So overall, our A-Math, which is the overall math screener in grades 2 through 9, we saw a slight increase overall of students who are at risk. So if you remember, the line basically indicates that indicator between whether the student is at risk or not at risk. Purple means that they're on track, and pink means that we need to take a further look into what's going on with them. So, and then the different, the darkest pink is the highest concern area, then lighter pink, then dark purple, then light purple. I don't make the color choices, but, so purple's good. I just pulled the data by grade. So this is on the left-hand side of the chart, you'll see the number of students that are screened out of the total number of students and the percentage screened. The numbers in Fastbridge are not perfect. There might be students who, are no longer attending, but for the most part, you can get a sense of the percentage of students that we have screened. In second grade, we saw that increase there, and third grade stayed the same. Fourth grade, we saw that slight decrease, as well as fifth grade. Just to look at previous year's data, we do typically see across the board a winter dip, and then oftentimes it rebounds in the spring. So that's a common trend that we've seen over the last lots of years that we've had, basically since we've had Fastbridge. There tends to be a little bit of a winter dip. In sixth and seventh, this is obviously at the middle school level now, a slight decrease in sixth and in seventh as well, and then slightly less for eighth. And then we chose not to collect the data at ninth grade this year because of CAPD. For reading, we did do the kindergarten first grade. This is a requirement of the READ Act, so that has to happen 3 times a year. So you can see in our early reading a slight increase. We have a number of teachers using pilot resources, but we wouldn't have any sort of indication. I don't believe that putting that into place in the fall would immediately show an outcome mid-year. And then a slight decrease in grades 2 through 8. I just want to indicate that grade 1, that lower completion when I pulled it, was due to Loyola has a whole nother set of assessments that they have to do in Spanish. So they were still finishing up the English screener there when I pulled the data. And then that's second and third grade, fourth and fifth, sixth and seventh, and then eighth. And then again, we did not collect it in ninth grade because of the pressure of the CAPD assessment. Should I pause there? Any questions on Fastbridge before we go to?
Is there a reason the 7th grade reading percentage is quite low?
Probably also partially
Yeah.
because of CAPD as well. That would probably be a factor there. I think as students get older too, there's, you tell an elementary student to take an assessment and they do it. I think as you get older, it can be more challenging. So it's probably a combination of a number of reasons. Could also be absences.
I have a question. For the 6th and 7th middle school math assessments, are you doing Fastbridge testing on any of the students who currently are opting out of CPM math?
We are not.
You're not, so this data would not be reflective of their?
No.
How about MCAs? Do they take MCAs
Yes.
scores? They do take MCAs, but not Fastbridge?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions before she moves on?
Okay. CAPD is a new requirement that we had. We kind of got late warning of the requirement to implement it this year. I did do a more extensive presentation at the TLAC committee this week, but just wanted to loop you all in a little bit on to what we have on our plates in terms of assessment this year and why, we're seeing some of the stresses in our system in terms of assessment. So CAPTE Read Basics is, similar administration to a FastBridge. It's an online, it's an online assessment that students take on their devices. It's called a diagnostic. We don't actually diagnose anything, including dyslexia, so I just want to be careful with that word, but that is technically what it's called as an assessment. But really what it does is we take students that are not meeting at grade level and we use it to figure out what is that root cause of what's causing them that challenge in reading. So this is the one and only MDE approved screening tool. We had no, other components of the READ Act. We had, we could choose A, B, C, or A or B. This one is the only state-approved diagnostic for grades 4 through 12 and was required to implement this year. And it's given to any student who is not reading at grade level. And it's really to understand what is the gap in their foundational reading skills. And so just to go very high level, there's a lot of things that go on in a student's brain when they're reading, or an adult's brain, but more so in a student's brain, and their brain is developing. So when a student is reading, they have to know a lot about the technical part about decoding and the alphabetic principles, how different letters and correspond to sounds, how phonemes work together. So those are all kind of the technical components of reading. But the other part of reading is you have to know a lot about the background knowledge. You have to understand vocabulary. You have to know how the structure of the English language works. And all of that gets woven together into your final assessment of whether a student is at grade level or is a skilled reader. So we know from our, assessment data and other data whether a student really has that all woven together or if they don't, but we haven't had systematic data on understanding where that key gap is at the individual student level of what they need to work on in order to get to that end result. Really what we focus on is making sure that these bottom parts of the rope, when we read, we don't have to sound out every word because we have automaticity. That means we can automatically look at a word and I can see that this says Laker. I don't have to sound that out. So that allows your brain that is doing a lot of work during reading to really focus on the content and the meaning of the words. So really that threshold is once students get to that automatic level, they can really read fluently in order to learn information. What we want to make sure students know how to do is be able to have all those foundational skills really automatic. For a lot of different reasons, the student may not have that in place. Reading is not a natural human skill. It is something that has to be explicitly taught, and we actually have to build pathways in our brains in order to do it. So sometimes that works out in the instruction we provide or the reading that students do, and sometimes they need something a little bit more specific in order to help them. So when the students take CAPTE, we're untangling that rope a little bit and determining whether the root cause of their reading challenge has to do with decoding, vocabulary, morphology, so that has to do with prefixes, suffixes, and roots, sentence processing, reading efficiency, and comprehension. So every student that is not reading at grade level has to be given this CAPTE to understand what the root cause is for their reading challenge. When we did our data poll this fall, about 30% of our students in grades 4 through 12 were identified. Based on my conversations with other districts, I think this is about on par from what we're seeing from colleagues, maybe not districts that have had, explicit science of reading implemented already, but this is about what my colleagues are seeing as well. So when we pulled 4th and 5th grade, we've already this year given 331 students that assessment in 4th and 5th grade. And in middle school, we've completed 545 assessments in grades 6 through 8. And then at the high school, Again, this was pulled on Wednesday. I just looked at it. I think it's closer to 600 now. So we are making our way through this massive amounts of students who need to take this assessment. We don't really know a ton about it, and I don't believe anybody in Minnesota has used it. So the whole state is on this learning curve on how to read the assessment data, how to make sense of it. We have a committee that's working on interpreting the data and coming up with next steps. And so it's a very new, very, every day is kind of unfolding how we're implementing this and how we're looking at the data to figure out what it means and building next steps. And the culmination at the end of this year is to modify our local literacy plan in order to come up with specific plans on how to address the data that we saw in this assessment. Parents did have the opportunity to opt out. We saw much higher rates at the high school than we did at middle school, than we saw very few at the elementary. So this is just a little bit of context as to why our assessment system is pretty strained right now, trying to get all of these assessments complete and figuring out what they mean.
Board member comments, questions?
Dr. Zumbush, thank you for this. I love how you said the components of CAPD, you're untangling the rope a little bit. I liked that analogy. So when families and the district get kind of these results, if you will, of this diagnostic tool that shouldn't be diagnostic, are they going to say like student A really needs to work on number 1 and student number 2 we meaning the test, notices that number 6 really is the issue or whatever?
Yes.
Again, not diagnostic, but is that kind of how results come through? Like it's kind of one of these 6 buckets?
Yeah, and it's kind of, it kind of builds on itself. So if a student has trouble in 1, they're not going to be able to receive, and they have challenges in 2 through 6 also. We have to address number 1, because if they can't decode, they can't then, figure out vocabulary from context. So it's a little bit building from the ground up. So we kind of identify the first area that is a concern, kind of more or less in this order. So if 1 is a challenge, we start with 1. If 1 and 2 are fine and 3 is a challenge, then we would start there.
And so, in a sense, when all of these results, when all of these results come through, so we could ideally give, if something comes through and you're giving, first of all, let me back up. When are results expected again? I know I asked this last time and I can't remember the answer.
It's complicated.
By primary and
So
secondary, maybe?
elementary families are getting them at conferences.
Okay.
We're still trying to figure out the best way to communicate it to secondary families, because it's just complicated to give family reports. I probably am going to end up emailing everybody.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like an email. It's not like we get in the mail or like through, everybody gets their FastBridge and their MCAs and things like that. Like this is a little bit different in terms of the delivery.
We're still working through that. FastBridge does get put into Infinite Campus, and we've
Right.
provided interpretation guides, and I think it's been in our system long enough that families and teachers know how to walk families through the reports, and they can also speak to it. This is a little bit more challenging because the secondary teachers have not even gone through REDAC training yet and don't have, so it's a bit of a challenge to figure out the best way to communicate to families.
So that's kind of where I'm going, actually. You were reading my mind. So especially at like the secondary level, right, that hasn't received the REDAC training yet. This is being mandated.
Correct.
Like, you have to do this screener. And I'm a fan of data. I think we all are a fan of data. Like every piece of data is helpful. But, okay, so say you're a 8th grade teacher who, now you have these results, say, what can you do with that? and this is, I think, more of a question for the state, I suppose. But it's just kind of like, how are we supposed to, analyze this data? And if I'm a teacher, okay, well, I've got 3 students of the, I don't know, 10 in my English class that took the CAPTE test. I've got, 2 that really need to work on number 1. I've got 3 that really, 5 and up.
Yeah.
How, as a teacher, am I supposed to customize, I guess this is rhetorical, how am I supposed to customize my teaching when this could potentially be any different way? It's kind of like throwing Jell-O at a wall to kind
Yeah.
of see what sticks. Do you know what I mean? I guess it's rhetorical, but I
Yeah,
mean.
I think part of the answer is, I don't know. I'm not sure anyone in any district knows entirely at this point. The other thing I would say is that there's a number of students that already have something in place, like an IEP, or they might be
Sure.
receiving some type of intervention, in which case this information would be used to make sure that we're hitting the right root cause in that service that they're already receiving. So that would be one thing that's immediately actionable, is we can take that and make sure that the frequency and the type of intervention they're receiving is exactly targeted to what we need it to. In terms of the students that are left that haven't, necessarily been identified, and starting in 4th grade, we don't have 4th and 5th grade reading interventionists. We have 1 reading interventionist for both middle schools. So we don't have a lot of structural support in order to provide those services. So it is a little, very challenging because there's no other location in order to do that. The other thing I'll say is our middle school and high school have started cross-curricular teams to figure out what this means and how to start working on addressing it. It's a little bit of a grassroots process on who's ready to start having these conversations. But we do have that component going. And the other component that I think is important is we're revisiting the structure of our schedule to make sure that whatever we put into place down the line has the right structure in our day in order to be able to make sure that this can be addressed. But I think overall, while we're doing some of those things, I think the question of what is a, average 7th grade teacher going to be able to do with this, I don't think a lot at this point.
And I guess too, my last comment, which is kind of rhetorical too, is when we say, this is diagnostic, we can't diagnose dyslexia, I'm worried that there's going to be some results that come in, and again, we haven't seen what results look like. If I'm a 9th grade parent and my kid's CAPTE results come back, it says your child is showing characteristics of dyslexia, and I'm thinking, well, holy cow, what do I do? Like, my kid's already in 9th grade. I fear there's going to be some preemptive fear, and
there already is. I've talked to
You know?
tons of parents that are already having this, because we did have to inform parents that this was coming.
Sure.
So I've talked to.
I'm one of 'em.
An extensive amount of parents that have had that exact concern. And I don't know that I think, the messaging has, and I have a 6-page FAQ from families. If you want to see all of the questions that are being asked and how
Yeah.
they're being answered, we have that resource. But I think we have more questions than answers, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. This is interesting.
And I just,
For asking those, because I had this similar questions on just like how parents were notified and reporting, but even in like the reporting, are parents getting results back as a report, or?
They will. They haven't
they're-
yet. 4th and 5th grade families will get it at conferences, because 4th and 5th grade teachers have gone through REDAC training. We were able to go to every elementary site and train them on what does this mean? What does the family report look like? How to have a conversation with families at conferences. We just don't have that same infrastructure at secondary right now, so we're still working through the best way to get it to families and how to, our commitment is to get it back to families. We just don't, we're still working through how exactly to do that at secondary.
Okay, yeah, I was curious, and even I would comment like on the FastBridge scores too, like me reading this deck prompted me to go in to look for my kids, because like, you don't get a notification that scores are done or when they're taking those tests, so I think if there's a way we can better communicate that with families, it's probably
FastBridge
helpful.
scores have not been uploaded into Infinite Campus yet. We have to wait till they're all, like, the makeup window is totally complete. So then after that, they will all be uploaded into Infinite Campus.
Director France.
First of all, thank you. I know that we talked about this, and there was a ton of questions in the Teaching and Learning Committee about this too, that basically the CAPTE is pretty much putting the cart before the horse with where we are with the READ Act and trying to understand how this all works. Given the fact that other districts have had similar conclusions, and I assume that with everything hitting so fast, and also assuming that this test was meant to get data sooner, not necessarily quality data at that, is there anything that we can do as a board to also try to talk to legislatures, especially in this policy season, about maybe waiting on something like this and actually understanding the impact and how it's supposed to be measured? Considering that it is happening concurrent to every other assessment, as well as before the full rollout of the READ Act?
Yeah, I think from me personally, just from overseeing assessment, it's been challenging because the timelines have changed multiple times, even since July. We had one thing in July, we had another thing in October, then we had another communication. And I think the challenge is we already had our FastBridge, our contracts are due July 1st. We already had all of our contracts in place. We already had we can't really, we're not able to make really quick adjustments like that because there's so many interdependencies. We can't just pull FastBridge away because so much of our system for intervention for special ed is reliant on that. So it just takes a really long time and a lot of conversations in order to understand all of these moving parts. So I would say with the READ Act generally, I don't really get to have these types of opinions very often, but I would say with the READ Act generally, I think there's been changes that have been made based on how it's been rolled out. I think what would be really, really great is if we have a firm decision on what we're doing significantly before the end of, like, the start of the new fiscal year, because it's just really hard to make these mid-course corrections as we go. So more time to be able to plan all of this out would be probably my number one thing. But yes, I don't think we can go backwards in terms of the cart before the horse. I mean, it's here and, everyone's doing it. So I think there will be feedback from my professional group about how this all worked and how to try and, I think I have a concern about just the assessment strain on our students right now.
The other thing too.
It's
They're getting tested
the
beyond the
number
norm.
of assessments that our students are having to sit through, especially at, grades 5 and 8. I personally think it's too much. So how do we really dial back into what we really need for actionable data versus, I don't like testing for testing's sake. And there's a lot of students that did have to spend a lot of time on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just one question for you. Oh, did you? Go ahead.
I'll go after you.
All right, thanks. So you said this kind of came up all of a sudden.
Yeah,
Am I paraphrasing you correctly?
it didn't come up all of a sudden. The specifics of what was required and when changed a few times over the summer and in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the timing of it all, can you kind of explain how that happened? Because it all sounds like everything that you just said to Director France's question, like, sounds wrong. Right? Not wrong, right? But the implementation of everything, right? The way it's all being done, the fact that we have teachers who, like, aren't even fully trained on the READ Act, right? But now the state is asking us to implement something that clearly should not be implemented. Yes, you might have the correct intention, but if we can't do anything about it, and it just seems like you're just causing us more work, kind of like unfunded mandates, right? That's pretty much what it is, right? It's just another unfunded mandate you're gonna throw at us. Am I getting all of that correct? I'm just trying to make sure
Yes,
that
I
we're
would
on the
agree.
same
And
page.
I-
Yes.
And I would say the funding, the cost is time of instruction.
Yes, yes, again, right, same thing.
Well, and we had to buy the county.
Man
Yeah,
hours,
well, that,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I just wanna make sure I was interpreting all of that correctly to
If I were to
fully get it.
guess, I think they want, I think they want, a sense across the state of what does our landscape look like for 12? Which I understand their rationale for wanting that. I'm not sure that it was fully fleshed out exactly what that would mean for districts and communicating with families.
Got it. All right.
That's my personal opinion.
No, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add a couple things. I did have the pleasure of attending as an observer the Teaching and Learning Committee, and a couple of things that came out of there that I haven't heard talked about this evening in regard to the CAPT presentation is, as we continue we're strained with resources. One of the members of that committee made the comment about, as we're finding out these results and communicating with parents, what do we do with them? It's kind of the same, the same question. I personally think it's great. I don't like a lot of assessments either, but I think this is necessary for our older kids especially, because we have older kids who've been on iPads and phones for the last, how many years, and they simply can't read, right? And so I think I understand the reasoning behind it, but now what do you do with it, right? And so my challenge to the district is this might be a perfect opportunity to engage our community partnerships as it relates to our strategic plan. And this community member said, why don't we have parent volunteers come in? And, work with our parents, work with our communities to come in and what do you do with this data? How do you support the kids? And if it's whatever it is, sitting with them, I won't get into more details, but I think we data's great, but now what, right? And identifying these kids and what do you do about it? You have to have a plan. That's I guess the whole point of it. The other thing that I think is really challenging is that this is not being started until 4th grade. But correct me if I'm wrong, our 4th grade teachers not even teaching phonics, right? They're past the teaching phonics, right? Because it's only K through 3rd is my understanding. So I find the timing of it, tests starting in 4th grade, to be very interesting because the kids are really learning how to read in kindergarten through 3rd grade is my understanding. So,
Yeah,
And that's,
And that was also discussed
Yeah.
at the TLAC as to why.
yeah, that came up.
You probably missed that, but yeah.
No, I didn't miss it. I was there. I paid attention. I'm just that challenge was brought up, like, why are we not doing this? With
yeah.
the K
It was
through the 3rd
explained
grade,
why,
right?
yeah.
And
that
so-
night, on that question, when that question came up at the TLAC, the K-3 is where that foundational instruction starts. So the reason why it starts at 4th is because now we want to assess, did the K-3 foundation set?
Right.
So we wouldn't test it while they're actually learning it, because we know that they're in the process of learning it, so that would invalidate the assessment. So 4th grade is where we start this assessment to now assess those early foundational years of K-3.
Yeah.
And I would
then-
say the 4th and 5th grade teachers, through the REDAC training and through, the pilot resources are learning this, may not have learned it necessarily in teacher prep, but know that now as a 4th, even 6th, 7th, 9th, 10th grade teacher, we all need to understand the foundational reading skills and how to teach those. So I think that's a learning across the entire state is that, we want to put as many processes and procedures in place as possible to prevent that from happening after 3rd grade, but knowing that every teacher now needs, and probably parent as well, needs to understand what this looks like across the board, because it is everyone's job to help students through some of these things. So that's a shift, that's a mindset shift, that's a cultural shift, that's a systems shift across our whole state, that now we're thinking about every teacher as a reading teacher, regardless of age or content area. So that's part of the shift that needs to happen.
Right, and reading being so foundational to other subjects.
Yep.
Understand that completely. There was one other thing that was brought up in the TNL meeting. I believe one of the admin that was in attendance also mentioned how they may be not doing some other assessments to take away that assessment load. Could you elaborate on that as well, if that's happening across district or?
Yeah, I tried to allude to it a little bit in the Fastbridge, but we did remove that really time-intensive K-1 math screener for the winter because of that. Basically, I went to all of the sites and said, this is the reality of where we're at. How would we like to proceed as a team, and how do we want to think about assessment, and what do we need? And so it's been iterative, but the biggest shift, I would say, for all of this is at the high school level. I don't know that there's any high school anywhere that has a comprehensive screener in every single grade. Like, that's a new, there might be some, I don't know for sure, but it's a shift, and I've heard that from my colleagues as well, that very few high schools have this in place. And so that was the reason why I pulled back on the 9th grade Fastbridge for winter, was because this was a huge lift for all of the sites, but in particular, the high school. And then at the middle school, we really focused on making sure we had that math mid-year because of the resources and because of the teachers wanting to make sure we're implementing with fidelity. And that's probably why you saw some lower rates at English as well, for the reading Fastbridge, is because we made it clear that the CAPTE and the math Fastbridge in the winter was the priority. But we're also now in discussion on how does this look at the end of year, because Fastbridge at the end of year is already tricky, and now it's just we're racking up the hours and assessments.
Right, understood. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that.
One final kind of thought, I know it's late, but I was just thinking, probably I would speculate a large number of the students that are taking these are probably already on IEPs or have some form of supports in place. I know there's a lot of reading supports throughout the district or whatever else. Is there, I guess speaking as a parent of someone on an IEP, if I get this report back, it's going to be like, okay, already knew that. We're already doing a million different things, right? So I guess if I was going to offer some advice, to prioritize students that maybe aren't getting the services already, that, maybe haven't yet been identified, to provide those results first, or maybe perhaps including the report as part of IEP meetings, or, through some channels that they already have, right, to make that easier.
Yeah, thank you for that. We are working very closely with special ed. They've had a very heavy hand in all of this. So we are working with them to really think about the IEP component. I wouldn't say, well, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there are quite a few students who are not on IEPs. So I do think that is and like I said before, our special ed staff are kind of the one staff that are trained all the way through 12th grade. So to be able to make quick adjustments or just make sure that our IEPs are hitting the right thing is, I guess, the low-hanging fruit of all of this. Providing additional structures for students that, don't have any sort of structure for support is definitely the bigger lift with all of this.
Sure, okay. Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to make a clarifying statement. You know how sometimes you say things and then you sit in it and you think, that's not how I intended to say something. I didn't mean to perhaps say that if something comes back with dyslexia, that there's a fear there. There's nothing to be scared of. So I just wanted to clarify, I did not mean it perhaps the way it came out. So I've just been sitting in that for the last 5 minutes, so I just
And I actually think
needed to clarify that.
I actually think MDE is moving away from their verbiage about characteristics of dyslexia because it's confusing and we're not diagnosing dyslexia. So I think they're actually moving away from that. it,
think that's what I
really
meant,
it's about-
confusing more than fear.
It's really,
you know?
it really has to do with, like, are we missing foundational skills?
Right.
So that's really the way that I prefer to talk about it versus using something that we're not actually diagnosing.
Correct.
Well, thank you very much for all of that information. Thank you, Dr. Zimbush. And that concludes our study session portion of the meeting. I am actually going to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn, even though we don't typically do that for study session, and transition into closed meeting in accordance with the open meeting law, Minnesota statute 13D.05, pursuant to discussion of the superintendent mid-year evaluation. And I will take the roll call vote. Director Smith?
Did you open or just close?
I'm just following this.
Okay, we're closing a meeting we didn't open.
It's been open.
Oh, no, we.
Oh.
We adjourned our business meeting, going into a study session.
Mary, do you want to do this?
No, Martha, I would ask her. if just-
I read it.
Okay.
I have to read this
Got
for
it.
going into closed session. So are we good?
We're good.
We have a motion and a second. And so I will take a roll call. Director Smith? This is to go into closed session. Aye.
Yep.
Director France? Aye. Director Olsted?
Aye.
Director Mason?
Aye.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Atkinson? Aye. Thank you. Meeting is closed at 10:10.